A jury in New York has found the leader of a self-help group guilty of 7 counts of sex trafficking and racketeering. Keith Raniere attracted some high-profile followers to his group NXIVM, including actresses and one of the heirs to the Seagram's fortune. But prosecutors say the group was more like a cult that had a secret society of sex slaves. Some former recruits testified they were coerced into having sex with Raniere. They were also kept on starvation diets and even branded with his initials. Raniere was revered by the group as the smartest man in the world. Joining me now is Josh Block, and Josh has been following this trial closely. In fact, this whole case closely. He is the host and co-producer of the CBC podcast Uncover, Escaping NXIVM. Josh, welcome to you.
Thank you.
Let's start a little bit at the beginning. What was this group, and how did they get so much control over these women?
So NXIVM claimed to be this self-help, self-improvement organization, and they offered a host of expensive workshops that you could take, that you would spend $5,000 and take their intensive programs to learn to, help reach your personal and professional goals. As people climbed higher in this organization and got more involved in it, they started to become privy to another side of the organization. Eventually, what became the focus of the FBI's investigation was this secret sorority, a secret group of a women's group within the organization that the women said that they were being instructed in that group to have sex with Keith Raniere.
And how did Keith Raniere get people to agree to that?
Well, it's a long process, and this is part of our investigation, is to understand how is it that you can sign up one day for a self-help program, and then however many years later you are obeying commands to have sex with Keith Raniere, to get branded on your body with his initials. It's a slow process. He was able to build trust with people. He has a remarkable charisma, but the group also recruited really high profile and powerful, successful people. So they could use that as a calling card and say, hey, come join us. Look, the heir to the Bronfman fortune is here. We have the son of a Mexican president. We have famous actors here as well. So people were drawn because of the community he created around him. There was also a lot of secrecy. So you might have joined and taken some courses in the group and not known what was happening in the inner circle. In fact, many high-ranking members of the organization who were in it for years didn't realize what was happening in the inner circles of this group, that Keith Raniere was having sex with underage girls, that he was committing wire fraud and immigration fraud and forced labor.
Now, what were some of the things that he was doing? Give us some examples.
Well, so one of the remarkable things, there's many remarkable things that have come out in this trial, and this is a secretive group, so our window in it for so long has only come through the few people that were brave enough to come forward and share their story. In this trial, we've heard from a dozen former members of the group. One of them, a Mexican national, said that she was confined to a room for 2 years, that they had withheld her documents. She was not able to leave the room, let alone the country, because she had committed an ethical breach. She had a crush on someone that was not Keith Raniere. We also learned that he was grooming underage girls. In fact, this woman who was confined, her sister, was in a sexual relationship with Keith Raniere when she was just 15 years old. And in fact, we learned in the trial that Keith Raniere not only was engaged in this kind of illegal activity, but he tried to normalize it within the community. He spent a lot of time, baking into the curriculum that people were learning things like why it's okay for a grown man to have sex with an underage girl, a kind of moral relativism that he was espousing to his community. And then, the focus of the FBI's investigation is around this secret sorority, this secret women's group that it turned out he, despite his claims that he had no involvement with it, with this organization, he actually built this structure that essentially enslaved women. In order to join it, you had to hand over collateral to be part of the group in the form of nude photos, false confessions, explicit videos. And once these women were a part of the group, they started to, they were instructed, some of them, to have sex with Keith Raniere. And we heard testimony about how these women felt like if they did not follow through with that instruction, they were afraid their collateral would be released. So it was very emotional testimony. These women were terrified. They didn't know what to do. They felt really stuck. And didn't realize what they were getting into when they signed up for this self-help group.
So Josh, how did this finally get busted? Who blew the whistle, and how did police take him down?
It's so interesting. As we investigated this story, we discovered that there has been a long line of women that have been leaving this group, going to authorities, going to the media. It took a long time for people to pay attention. The media have written some articles about it. The authorities did nothing until Sarah Edmondson, who was this, someone I actually happen to know from childhood and is the central focus of our podcast. She came forward to the media claiming that she had been branded on her body, that she was part of this secret sorority, that she had Keith Raniere's initials on her body. She was on the front page of the New York Times in October of 2017. And on the heels of that article, the FBI launched their investigation. And they said they launched the investigation because of that article, because she had come forward. And the organization very quickly unraveled. Keith Raniere fled to Mexico. He was arrested a few months later, and as were 5 other high-ranking members of the organization. And the whole thing essentially collapsed after about 20 years in existence.
Okay, so what happens now? He's been found guilty, so what happens now?
So Keith Raniere will be sentenced in the end of September. There's the 5 other members who were his co-accused, who all pleaded guilty leading up to the trial, who will now be sentenced between July and September as well. And essentially NXIVM is done. So what happens now is the people who were victims of this organization will have a long road ahead of them to try and reckon with what happened and go through probably a lengthy healing process.
All right. Josh Block, host and co-producer of the CBC podcast Uncover, Escaping NXIVM. Josh, thank you.
Thank you.